Many of the Jews and religious proselytes followed Paul and Barnabas, who, speaking to them, persuaded them to continue in the grace of God.
Go ahead.
And the next Sabbath day came almost the whole city together to hear the word of God.
Everybody was keeping the Sabbath day, whether they were Jew or Gentile, did not matter. Let's go now to Acts chapter 17 and begin reading at verse 1. Acts 17, and we'll pick it up at verse 1. 17 and 1. Show you what Paul's custom was. Because everybody want to make it like Paul changed everything, as if he could change anything. It is God's Sabbath day. You understand what I'm saying? He the one that set it up, and if it's going to be changed, he'll be the one to change it. Anything anybody else does don't count. All you can do is mess up everything. That's all man can do, is mess up everything, and that is what he has done. Because he has convinced the world that the Sabbath day have changed, and nowhere in the Bible can you read where God ever changed it. It is the seventh day, and it will always be the seventh day, and God had it that way for a reason that we'll deal with in another time. But I'm going to tell you right now, it is pointing to the time when God will establish his day of rest on this earth for 1,000 years. That is what this seventh-day Sabbath day is all about. Man done had about 6,000 years to mess up everything. Now God's going to come back on that seventh day and straighten it all out. Let's go to Acts chapter 17 and begin reading at verse 1. Acts 17 and pick it up at verse 1. 17 and 1. Go ahead and read.
Now when they had passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where was a synagogue of the Jews.
Go ahead.
And Paul, as his manner was, went in unto them, and 3 Sabbath days reasoned with them out of the Scriptures.
That was his manner, to go into the synagogue on the Sabbath day. Let's go to chapter 18 now. Just turn right over, chapter 18, and we'll begin reading at verse 1. 18 and 1. 18 and 1. Go ahead and read.
After these things, Paul departed from Athens and came to Corinth.
Now he left Athens, he came to Corinth. Go ahead and read.
And found a certain Jew named Aquila, born in Pontus, lately come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because that Claudius had commanded all Jews to depart from Rome, and came unto them.
Go ahead.
And because he was of the same craft, he abode with them, and wrought, for by their occupation they were tent makers.
Go ahead.
And he's reasoned in the synagogue every Sabbath, and persuaded the Jews and the Greeks.
So wherever he went, it was the same thing, wasn't it? You know, he dealt on the Sabbath day, and there was always the Jews there, and there was always the Gentiles there as well. God do not have 2 agendas. He don't have one for the Jews and another for the Gentiles. Everybody do the same thing. That is why when the Lord gave the law, he said it is for Israel and for the stranger as well. The law was for everybody. You understand? Now, let's go to Acts chapter 20 now. And we'll begin reading at verse 6. Acts 20 and began at verse 6. 20 and 6. Okay, go ahead and read.
And we sailed away from Philippi after the days of unleavened bread.
Oh, so they were dealing with the days of unleavened bread still. You know, all this stuff Jesus was supposed to have nailed to the cross. That's what everybody tell you. But that is not what the Scripture is saying, isn't it? You know, here they are, long after Jesus died on the cross, they are still dealing with the days of unleavened bread, because the Lord even said about these high days that they ought to be kept forever throughout all generations in all of your dwellings. Now, these are the people here that, you know, they got their information firsthand. You understand what I'm saying? They didn't have to go around, they didn't have to wait around and read the Bible and try to figure it out and to decide whether or not, man done changed anything or not. They didn't have to do all that. They got their information firsthand. You understand? These are the people that walked around with the Lord, and they were still doing all of God's high days. You know what? The very first thing they did a few days after Jesus' resurrection, they kept the day of Pentecost. They got their information straight from them. Now, Jesus walked around with these people 40 days. And if he had nailed anything to the cross, he would have told them that. You know, all them high days and that 7th-day Sabbath day, you know, I just came down off the cross a few days ago, and I nailed it all to the cross. So y'all ain't got to bother with that no more. No, what did they do? A few days after his resurrection, after he done walked around and taught them for a while, they kept the day of Pentecost. And these same people, they still continued to keep the 7th day as the Sabbath day. Why? Because they understood that the law was good forever throughout all generations. Let's continue reading. What verse are we?
Verse 6.
Go ahead and read.
It said, and we sailed away from Philippi after the days of unleavened bread, and came unto them to Troas in 5 days, where we abode 7 days.
Go ahead.
And upon the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread.
When the disciples, they came together to sit down and eat. Go ahead and read.
Paul preached unto them, ready to depart on the morrow, and continued his speech until midnight.
Wait a minute. Now, how do you get first day of the week, Sabbath day, out of that? I mean, if you can do it, come up here, right here. You can take the podium, come on up here and show me how you get first day of the week, Sabbath day out of this. But yet they will read this and they will tell you, see, the Sabbath day was changed because Paul broke bread on the first day of the week and he preached to some people. I'm going to tell you something. Paul preached every day. There was no days at some point he didn't preach. I guess if it had said, well, on the 3rd day, I guess they would have said, well, you know, then the Sabbath day is now Tuesday. But he preached every day. Skip down to verse 16. I'm going to just throw this in here. Verse 16. Go ahead and read.
For Paul had determined to sail by Ephesus.
Go ahead.
Because he would not spend the time in Asia. For he hastened, if it were possible for him, to be at Jerusalem the day of Pentecost.
Another one of them days that the Lord said in the 23rd chapter of Leviticus, even these are my feast days. So now he done kept the unleavened bread, and he done kept the Pentecost, and he kept the Sabbath day as well, because as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stand up for to read. Let's go further now. Let's go to we're gonna read something from the Universal Standard Encyclopedia here. Show you where that first day thing came from. Start reading right there. Sunday. Go ahead and read.
Sunday. First day of the week.
And you knew that, didn't you? Yeah, I know you knew it. Everybody knows that Sunday is the first day of the week. And if you know what day the first day of the week is, then you know what day the 7th day of the week is, don't you? Go ahead and read.
It says, observed by Christians almost universally as a holy day in honor of the resurrection of Christ.
Well, it wasn't observed by Bible Christians, was it? Because the Bible Christians, they observed the 7th day, didn't it? But now, there came along another brand of Christianity about 300 years after the death of Jesus, and they decided that they were going to change everything. They didn't change it, but they tried, and they have convinced the world that it's been changed. But in reality, it have not been changed. It is still the 7th day. The Lord said forever throughout all generations. Go ahead and read on.
It says, the hallowing of Sunday appears incontestably as a definite law of the church in the beginning of the 4th century.
Well, it told you when they started that. Did you pay attention there? It said that started around the 4th century. In other words, about 300-some years after the death of Jesus, then they decided we're going to make Sunday the Sabbath day. Who decided it? It's going to even tell you that too. Go ahead and read.
It says the Emperor Constantine.
Now, Emperor Constantine, he made it law. But then there was another people that decided who was going to make it the first day of the week, and it's going to tell you. Go ahead and read.
The Emperor Constantine confirmed the custom by a law of the state.
He confirmed the custom by a law. But somebody had already made it, and it's going to tell you who it was that made it. Constantine, he just confirmed it and made it law. Go ahead and read on.
It says, throughout the medieval period, the authority of the church was so universally recognized that secular legislation in this regard was almost unnecessary.